Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Sarah.
And this is ANDOR CANDOR. We're talking all things ANDOR. And this week, we're talking about episode number 7, directed by Benjamin Caron and written by Stephen Shciff, titled Announcements. And we are so honored and happy to be joined by the amazingly talented artist, Skylar Verduzco, who drew our cover art for the series. We're so happy to have you back on the podcast, Skylar. It's been almost 2 years, over 2 years. Before we were talking about how much we were excited for ANDOR, and here we are now, like 7 episodes in. It's kind of wild.
Thank you so much for having me and for having me do the artwork. I'm so happy with the show and the direction it's going in. I love Cassian Andor so much, and I'm really grateful that you guys are giving me a platform to talk about how much I love him. Thank you.
You know, we were like, let's get her to do the art. And of course we have to invite her on. So I'm so thrilled that you could join us and we get to just, have some hot goss about like one of the best Star Wars characters and such a great show. It's so good.
So good.
So for our listeners who might have not listened to the last episode you were on, which everybody should check out because it was so much fun. It was like a big super yacky crossover when Space Wizards 2 was coming out, or Space Wizards 3. I've lost track. My wallet can't keep track anymore. Can you tell our listeners a little about like yourself and like why Rogue One is something that resonated with you, and also like what you were hoping for from the series and like why it's really sticking with you?
Yeah, sure. I'm an illustrator based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And, you know, the moment I watched Rogue One, something about it just immediately clicked with me. I think because the movie it's focusing on like actual people that exist in this universe. And as much as I love the Skywalkers dearly, it is really nice to just have people being people and like surviving. And my hope was that like, I really hope Andor just like pushes this in the same tonal direction. It doesn't get too wild with it, and it really has, and it's really stuck with it, which is why I think it's my favorite Star Wars show out of all of them that have been out recently, because it hits all of the marks for me.
I totally have to agree with you. Yeah, when it comes to kind of just dropping into the world with Rogue One and really like resonating with that, or really kind of working for you. And I feel like we're getting that to an even sharper, more specific degree with this show. And I think that's so good and like so much greater than like even my greatest expectations for it.
Yeah, I feel like this episode 2 really hit that home even more, and every week is really just like blowing me away in the best way possible, because I'm just like, how can it get better? And somehow it does. Like after last week's heist, it's like one of the best heist things that we've seen.
Which was a beautiful episode.
Yeah, just gorgeous. The Eye of the Aldhani is like, how can it get better than that? And then somehow we come back to back with another 50+ minute episode of Star Wars, and rather than being action heavy, it's dialogue heavy. Like we had a script, like a thick boy, like a thick script.
Thick, 2C.
Yeah, like
40 pages.
I feel like between jumping among the like various points of view on like Coruscant with Mothma and Dedra, and then also like Cassian, but then also Cyril, and then a little bit of Cinta, we're getting all of it. It's like such an ensemble show, and even though it is called Andor, it's like, what about all the people who are operating within Cassian's orbit, and like how are his actions affecting them, and like also now affecting the galaxy? And I really feel like we saw the repercussions of that in this episode, which was exciting. Did you guys enjoy getting to actually like see the consequences of last week, as opposed to just brushing past that and like moving forward with the story? Because I feel like that was a little unconventional for Star Wars to actually like take a minute to see like, oh, they did this thing and actually is like causing harm now, or like it's a big issue.
Absolutely. I thought the parallels between I guess I would call it like a head of security meeting, where they were talking, like the Empire was talking about like, this is everything that we're now doing because this happened. I thought that was like a really lovely parallel to like, you know, like Congress and stuff like that in America. And seeing like after that event happens, what happens to your everyday person? What happens to employees working for this, for the Empire, but also for the rebellion? Like, where it's not just you get the money and it's like, woo, we got the money, guys, thumbs up. It's like, okay, there's consequences to this now. A character still can't see her partner, potentially girlfriend, who's on the planet still. She's really worried about it, and she can't do contact because that would like that would blow their cover, and it's just real like drama, which I love.
Yeah, I think that that's the key of it. There's real drama here, and there's a real through line through this whole season so far. I feel like episodes 1 through 3 were something very specific, you know, like a 3-episode arc that dealt with a specific planet and specific characters. Episodes 4 through 6 were the same thing. And I was thinking to myself, okay, well, are we going to get some of these characters back, or are we just going to leave them behind and keep pushing forward? Because like I get it if we do, but I was so curious to know, okay, like we brought Fiona Shaw out to the premiere, like we can't not do anything more with her or Adria Arjona, right? Like, so I was so thrilled in this episode that all of the pieces were starting to be put together in this puzzle, where we get Cassian, you know, back on Ferrix, and we get those character moments, and then we also are getting a little bit of Cyril, and we know that like he and Dedra are gonna have this moment where they meet. I mean, we're past halfway through the series, it still hasn't happened, and I know that they've talked about it in interviews, so that kind of makes it pretty interesting there. And then we kind of get the rebellion formation side of it with boots on the ground and with people who are kind of orchestrating it. And I'm like, okay, the wheels are turning. Things are happening. And I think it's just so structurally well and meticulously drawn. And that's what is so much fun is this episode. It's the payoff of all 6 episodes that come before, while not actually like giving us the real like satisfaction of it, you know, it coming together, because we know that there's still more, and they're still spinning those wheels to show us that. So I don't know. I'm really impressed. Having a good time.
Oh yeah, and it's doing what is impressive in that we know where Cassian ends up eventually. Like, we know where he's going to be at. It's kind of similar to the Obi-Wan TV show, but it's like, but how do we get there, and how do we do it in a way that me, the viewer, I still don't know where it's going to go completely to get him to that point. I could think of possible theories, but I don't 100%. I can't 100% say this is what's going to happen. Like, I have a theory, like probably the K2 units that we saw, it's probably gonna be our boy K2SO eventually, but that could have been it. Like, I fully don't know technically.
Yeah, and it makes the show so interesting, especially in comparison to Obi-Wan a little bit, because we also know the outcome in that show, but the emotions of that show felt really, really big. It felt like it was taking big swings the entire time, and I applaud it for it. I mean, episode 6 has me in tears to this day. There's nothing better than that, you know, the one scene towards the end. But anyway, this is a show
that's still very part of the Skywalker saga DNA, more so than Andor.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then here in Andor, we know what the outcome is for these characters. We kind of know where all of the factions are headed, and yet this show feels completely like spoiler proof, but also theory proof, because it's like, I don't know, I'm just here for the ride, and I have a couple of ideas, but like it could go 1,000 ways. But like the emotions in this show are so much more specific and oftentimes really small. And that's what makes this show interesting. And it's amazing that we're getting a show like Obi-Wan, which was so big and so tied into everything, and the nostalgia factor, and you know, the legacy characters of it all, and to have those big emotions in that story, and then to have this story, which is still dealing with characters that we know and in a time that we know very well. And it's just it zones in very, very like small.
Episode 7 is awesome. It's fantastic. Like we mentioned, like the multiple points of view throughout, and like getting to juggle all of those. And Sarah, you and I talked about this last week. I really think the sweet spot for Star Wars TV and really any TV, like premiere TV in general, is going to be like 50 or 45 to like 55 minutes, or maybe even an hour. I really am loving House of the Dragon. Like Better Call Saul pushed the hour mark in most of its episodes in its final season, and that's like some of the greatest TV ever made. And I feel like Andor getting 2 weeks in a row of very action and then very dialogue heavy goes to show that it can do both. And this week, I think, really did that well. And I feel like it developed a lot of the characters in a new way and showed more in Cassian's journey and like his transformation into wanting to actually fight for something larger than himself. And the way that it ends is so interesting because it's like, how is he going to get out of prison? Especially getting put into prison by a K2 droid, which is so funny thinking of Rogue One when he's like, we're taking him into prison to imprison him, you know, and he slaps Cassian. So I think that's always funny now.
I mean, I just think it's interesting. We can't talk at length about the end to start off this, but I just want to say it's interesting that his sentence is 6 years. That's all I am saying. It's all I am saying. Does not live this long.
He dies in 5, so the math ain't nothing.
Anyway, if he had just stayed in prison, maybe he would have been alive. But
oh my gosh.
Anyway, so this episode, maybe we can start on the smaller thing here, and maybe the smallest kind of thread that we can pull on in this episode here is that of Cyril. We kind of get him
loser.
Just a couple
pathetic.
I love him. He's such a loser. I can fix him. No, truly, I think he's great. But we kind of open on him having this conversation once again with his mother, who is totally razzing him for his tailored collar on his brown suit. And he's going to his new job. How do we feel about kind of his story as it's continuing? And like, where do you guys think it might go here?
It could go in so many different directions.
Right.
It could end with him succeeding up, or it's going to end with him dying.
Okay, yeah, right, okay, yeah.
Those are my only two thoughts, is that he is either pivoting himself to just like totally just like be like, for some reason, Cassian's nemesis that Cassian doesn't know about. Where it's just like, he's just like has a pinned photo of him being like, I hate this guy, and Cassian's like, I don't even remember you.
Right, it's like the Thanos meme, with Wanda when she's like, you took everything from me. He's like, I don't even know who you are.
Exactly. I really feel like they could have that dynamic, which could be really fun, and that could be pushed either with him dying or him like becoming like a really bad person potentially.
Right. I think it's so interesting. I think like he definitely has the nemesis in Cassian that Cassian doesn't know about, because when he gets to the job and he's like, the guy is like, Morlana 1, he's like, yes, I got punished for trying to uphold the law. 2 people died.
Co-workers specifically.
2 co-workers died, and like, you know, there's somebody on the loose, and I'm like, and he gets so intense about it, and you're like, oh bro, like, you like, go touch some grass, drink a glass of warm milk,
relax.
Like,
yeah,
it's so, he's so pathetic. And
I could see his like willingness to like, he keeps being like, I was upholding the law, like I'm a good person, I'm doing this. Like, I feel like that energy plus Dedra's very chaotic potentially.
Oh my
like
gosh.
I feel like she's gonna be looking for information behind like somebody's back or something, and that's how they're gonna like get introduced, is she's gonna try and ask him, and he's gonna be like, well, I can give you more than just this, and then work his tail.
She is gonna have him on a leash. He will be her pet. He is gonna feed her information. He is just gonna be like eyes are all wide for this woman in the Imperial Security Bureau who notices him and gives him attention and is like, yes, of course, this is a threat to the Empire. Like, we got to help out. We got to do something about these guys. Like, I think this Aldhani thing is connected to Cassian Andor, right? Because there's that moment where he looks at the news and he's like, it's got to be Cassian. Of course it's Cassian who robbed this place. I just know it. You know, it's like Cyril is that guy who's like, yeah, this is it. This is the one. And I think that's why we also end the episode with him. Like, he's at his computer. He's like looking through all these little documents on the screen. And like, I think he's going to discover that it is Cassian somehow. Like, in his, what is he doing? Fuel purity is his new job. Sounds very exciting. This guy tried to make it all.
Standards.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I guess that sounds fun. It's a desk job, you know, and the monotony of the entire operation there is quite tiresome. Yeah.
I would love to like just take a moment to talk about the aesthetics of both like Cyril's mom's house and the Bureau standards while we're kind of talking here, because we open up on that shot and I immediately the episode and I immediately went, oh my gosh, that's the capsule tower in, I believe it's in Tokyo. But it's, if you look it up, it is a very specific, you know, building that is all, it looks like everything kind of stuck together like a magnet, and everything is like weird angles. They're not all in the same way, but they're like hexagonal sort of spaces that have a single window on the end. And that the aesthetics of that space, like really, it feels like the visual style was really influenced by that, which I find to be very interesting considering like the architectural style that we're getting of Coruscant in this show, which is so different from the very chrome Coruscant of the prequels. And then the Bureau of Standards, to me, I wrote, this place feels like Blade Runner plus the Jedi Archives plus Vulcan School. So if anybody is rolling with me on those three references, please let me know on Twitter. Jedi Archives plus Vulcan School with a side of Blade Runner is what I was thinking, because like, I don't know, in the Vulcan School, they're all like in their little pods and like each individually working, and then like the teacher can like walk around above them while they're working. Anyway.
I think I remember that from something. Weird. Yeah.
My thought was, I was like, it's like 80s capitalist, like workplace plus, I don't know, it gave off like Library of Congress vibes.
Yes.
Plus super sick catwalk. Like that was like, it was really cool. I can't deny that. Like, that's good design.
Yeah, totally. It was so interesting to kind of see how that space was built out and how like monotonous it is, but also just like being very weird.
I love how this show every week gives us something where I'm like, ooh, you know, it's not often in Star Wars where you're like, ooh, that's different. You know, like that's speaking of
ooh, the party beach planet.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, come on. There's so many things.
Space Florida.
It is Space Florida. Totally. It's totally got the vibe.
We'll get to Beach Planet, but I have to say up front, I love that Cassian is just like, you know what? I'm gonna rob the Empire, then I'm gonna go on spring break, and I'm gonna and then, you know, he's just having a good time. Anyways, so that's his life right now. But I do want to say too, like with Cyril, on the collar discussion, I love his mom saying that when he's like, you know, what does my collar say about me? And and she says, look at me. I don't believe in myself. I'm desperate for approval. And as we talk about like what's next for Cyril, I think that will continue to drive him, his desperation for approval. I think he's going to make one more mission to try to catch Cassian, and then maybe give up after that, or maybe become disillusioned with the whole Imperial thought machine and become a Fulcrum agent. I still think that would be really interesting to see. It would be
really interesting if he changes gears, but I just really think he's one-sided nemesis thing.
Yeah, probably.
That's right. That's gotta be it.
Because part of me is like, is Deidre the one-sided, like hard in on the Empire, and like and maybe Cyril is the malleable one. We'll see. But either way, I'd be really intrigued. I just like our pathetic little boy. He's just such a loser.
He's such a loser. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I could watch like an entire season of him at this bureau just like hating every single moment. Like people trying to do like ice cooler talk and he's just like, you're about Cassian Andor and they're like, what? Stop bringing up this man.
Have you heard about Aldhani? I can tell you about Aldhani.
I could have
I
prevented
know
that.
it was this guy, Cassian Andor. They're like, who? He's like, Cassian Andor.
I am very good at my job. And I don't think other people see that. And I want to be very good at this job, but I also need to find Cassian Andor, like literally all day long.
Yeah.
I literally like when after seeing the first 3 episodes, I went, I did not expect to walk out going, this guy is my favorite character. And I'm like,
Kyle Solar, he's my man. He's the man.
Best. Anyway.
Yeah. While we're on Coruscant, do we want to jump over to Mothma? Because speaking of consequences from last week, I think that is really interesting with her and Luthen. And oh my gosh, I love Luthen and his little radio that he's listening to in the beginning. And it's like, oh, Aldhani, they're arresting everybody. And he's like listening in the back room. I love that. I love little Star Wars.
So the little thing I noticed that one person on Reddit also noticed, and I haven't seen anyone else talk about it, is in his store, like the front part of the storefront part, there is a Mexican artifact of the double-headed serpent. Feel free for both of you to like look that up. But like it was sort of like shoved in the background of the 4th episode, I believe. And in this one, it was like pretty prominent, specifically talking to Mon Mothma. And there's like several different theories I have around it. Where it's like, I feel like Diego Luna could have just been like, we gotta throw something Mexican in here. We gotta do it. And this piece in particular, the really interesting thing about it is that it hasn't been in Mexico for like 500 years. It's actually in the British Museum. Notorious holder of artifacts. But
right. So
I'm not sure if he's trying to say something about that.
The answer is yes. I think we are trying to say something. Go ahead.
He is good friends with I'm trying to get his name 100% correct. I can't remember. It's Jorge something. He did like the Book of Life. He did El Tigre, and in his new show, I can't remember. I haven't seen it yet. It's like on my list of things to watch. It's something. The main girl's name's Maya, but I know one of the designs in the show that Diego Luna is in is based on that serpent. So I'm like, oh, maybe he's like throwing a shout out to his friend Jorge. That would be really cute. But then I also saw somebody. It was the one comment under the person on Reddit who found that out and noticed that in the background. They said, like, could this be a symbol for Mon Mothma as a character? Like, because there's 2 sides to her, potentially.
Interesting.
And I was like, ooh, there's a lot of... This little thing in the background has so many different reasons for why it could be here. And not many people really have noticed or talked about it yet.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it can be read any of those ways.
Oh, yeah, I just have my Mexico vision on this month. It's, Latinx History Month, so I was just like,
absolutely.
I noticed it.
Well, especially too in regards to the fact that I don't think we've talked enough about this on the podcast, but Luthen Rail's museum is highly problematic. I mean, they're artifacts from these worlds that have been lost, and he has taken these items and they're now for sale, and they're for people's pleasure and entertainment and display, as opposed to like these artifacts that were very important culturally to certain groups, like the Wookiees on Kashyyyk or the Utapauans, right? And it goes to show how during the time of the Empire, like a lot of these civilizations are receding into the background, right? It's back to Alexander Freed and Victory's Price. Every chapter's name is a lost world or a destroyed
Yeah.
world. And I think that's something that we see, even Canary. Canary is a world that uh, is destroyed in an Imperial mining incident. What was lost on that world because of the Empire's actions? And was it swept under the rug? Was it used for people's monetary gain? It's bad.
The thing I really like is that's another where I'm like, I can definitely tell like Diego Luna and at least like the writers, like I'm not sure if they've talked or if they just like had like a big Latino writing staff, because like that's like a direct parallel to like the mining that's happening into like Brazil and like the destruction in Brazil because of all the deforestation, and like how it's affecting the indigenous communities. They were like, this happened to Cassian, and we're like, it's a complete like it's 100% what that is a reference to. And I was really shocked in the first couple episodes when they like revealed that to us. I was like, wow, that's it. That's his childhood backstory. Oh my God. That's how he got involved into when he was like, oh, I've been in the rebellion since I was 6. Oh, that's how. It's so interesting. And I really appreciate it. Like from a viewer standpoint, like they are putting a lot of really interesting world building about stuff that's happening now, which is really cool.
And I think with a show that's happening in this specific time period in the Star Wars universe, it makes a lot of sense and is a really valuable inclusion in the show to kind of reflect our world today, and talk about some of these issues in ways that they haven't been talked about like in Star Wars before, or haven't been touched on in the same way in Star Wars before. I'm now reading curator notes on the British Museum's website about this piece. It's
It's super interesting.
Yeah. And it's only, and obviously like very recognizable. But like also it's only one of every like piece that's in here. So it's like multiply these thoughts and feelings that we're having about this specific piece with like it within, and then throwing it into the Star Wars side of it with every single piece in there. So
Yeah.
I really do kind of think that it's an all of the above situation and what it could mean or how it got there. And there's a lot to be said about ideas of colonialism and
Oh yeah, this show is being not subtle about
no
the characters going through it like
right.
constantly. Like the part of the like, oh, these are the new rules that we're enforcing on every part of the Empire. One of them was like, if you are using a celebration as an excuse to like let these tasks happen, you will be the people in the celebrations will be severely punished. And it's like, okay, that's bad.
Right.
But it's so fascinating, the details that they're putting into the show, where like I feel like in a regular Star Wars movie there's not enough time to have characters say stuff like that and like ground it like that into reality, where you're like, oh, consequences are really heavy, like in the real world and in the show.
And like speaking of consequences and like really saying those words, there's the line between, or the interaction between Mon Mothma and Luthen, where Mon Mothma's like Luthen says, the Empire has been choking us so slowly, we have started not to notice. It's time to force their hand. And Mon Mothma goes, people will suffer. And he goes, that's the plan.
Yeah.
And even though he might be trying to talk about the Empire in this case, whereas like a lot of the rules will have people will suffer.
There are no rules moving forward,
right? But like
according to him,
when I was just thinking about that, I was thinking, oh well, he's trying to punish the Empire, but like he might be trying to punish the individual citizens to get them so mad that they rise up.
Yeah,
and
we don't fully know all of his cards, which I also really like. That I felt like when we first met him, I was like, oh, I kind of know what his character is going to be like, and then slowly, the more time I see him in his everyday stuff and not just like espionage, I'm like, who are you?
Well, now he's ordering a hit on Cassian with Vel.
I know.
And Kayla, what's his deal?
And he literally like puts on a costume, like he becomes somebody else. Like who are you really? What's up with your laser ship? Please tell us ASAP. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a mystery, and it becomes like even more interesting that an exchange happens in that location
Yeah.
with the context of what he does for a living. Um, he's so far above in that role. He's so far above the people, the everyday citizen. He's so far above where Vel was as an Aldhani citizen, like as blending in that space. And then we see her in this episode in a very polished, formal makeup and hair. And you're like, oh, she's, I mean, obviously this was a role that she was playing to pull off this heist, but she's a completely different person as well. And these Coruscanti people, I don't know about them. I mean, they're on the right side here. They're going towards good ends with the rebellion, but I don't know if I know enough to capital T trust them.
I do like that you mentioned where this conversation's happening, because like, speaking of people suffering, like how many people had to suffer to get those objects into that shop in the first place, right? Like he is so immune to it at this point. And I think that's why he's doing what he does. And he tries to, I don't know if like gaslight is the right word, but really change Mon Mothma's like mode of thinking to be like, this is not going to be pretty. This is not going to be clean. Like, things are going to happen that you don't agree with. So you just got to throw your conscience out the window, or else you should surrender and give up and throw this out entirely, because like, that's the kind of attitude you need to have in order to move forward with this. Because she's like, I thought we were just doing a network of people who wanted to kind of build some things in the background. He's like, no, we're taking action. We're robbing places. We're getting credits. we're building an entire rebellion off of this. And people are going to suffer because of it. And like, we know too, like he interacts with Saw Gerrera at some point. So does he go so far in one direction that he is more affiliated with Saw, who we know is somebody that Mon Mothma and Rogue One doesn't see eye to eye with? So it'll be interesting to see how those politics of these two characters evolve in the outcome of Aldhani, especially as we see like how these planets suffer because of it, like with these new Imperial rules, like Skylar mentioned, and also just like Mothma's moral compass, like how that weighs her in each direction.
It's kind of complicated, or maybe illuminated by the conversation that she has with Tay Kolmar later in the episode, where she's like, the Mon Mothma you know is a lie.
That was such a good scene.
Tay. Okay, they definitely loved each other, right? Can we all agree on that? Like, so like Mon Mothma wanted to get with him, and then she had to marry shitty ass Perrin as an arranged marriage, and she's like, but I love Tay Kolma, because she literally grabs his arm and she's like, let's rekindle that kinship from our youth, Tay.
Well, she also
I hope she enters her divorce era. Like, that's all I need for her.
Yes. But it's so interesting, because she is living a lie in her day to day. You know, she doesn't agree with Perrin. I bet she finds motherhood, especially with a young teen daughter, very difficult. I remember myself as a tween/young teen. I can imagine I was pretty difficult to deal with on the day to day. Like, I imagine she's at a complicated time there, and also just navigating a more complicated political situation. So I don't think she has any issues with playing a role and in living two lives. But yeah, the question is like, where is her line? That kind of puts her in a more establishment place, whereas other people kind of continue to push harder and harder. And yeah, Tony Gilroy was like, episode 4 is going to make you change how you think about Mon Mothma. And I was like, okay, episode 4, good. And then I got to this episode and I was like, what is he talking about? Episode 7 is the one where I'm like, yes, my entire opinion is changing about her, because this whole scene with Tay is it's so high risk and so exposed within that dinner party scene. And it's also because they're speaking quietly to one another, and because there's that level of secretive, it's also very like intimate. They know each other.
Yeah.
Like, there's a sense of understanding that they have between each other, and things that don't need to be said in many ways, especially at the end, when she's like, to be continued, and they kind of just like look at each other. It's very interesting to watch her progress, and if I may take this moment while I'm on my tiny step stool, this is the best she's looking in this whole series.
Oh yeah.
Holy cow. I recognize that this clip and this outfit that goes throughout most of this episode was, the one that's most heavily featured in promotional materials, but like, wow, ma'am, wow.
Well, and
stunning.
Skylar being here, Skylar drew Mom
I know.
Mothma in this outfit for art. So like, of course you gotta have Skylar on for this episode. It's the episode,
oh my God. That was like
we've
so
been waiting.
unplanned. Like it wasn't like they contacted me 12 hours ago. Like this has been like in the works for a hot second. So it was just like total accident that this happened.
Love that.
And we got a Rogue One reference or two in, and I'm just like, this is such a good timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. So thrilled you're here to just talk about her beauty. I mean,
her costume is, I don't know, I'm not sure if you both have looked up who the costume head is for this show, but like whoever it is, like all my praises. Oh my God. Because not just for Mon Mothma, they've like seriously put a lot of thought into like every aspect of it. And I'm loving it.
100%.
Michael Wilkinson is his name. He's done Watchmen, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Aladdin are some of his notable credits.
Interesting. Watchmen's fantastic.
Yeah, I was gonna say Watchmen.
Especially. Yeah, that makes sense. I do want to mention, like, on the topic of Mon Mothma, I really love the idea of politics being too strong for each other's tastes and how she uses that kind of back at him when he says it originally. At first, Tay is like, oh, I think if we really talk about how I feel, you're going to view me a little differently because I've gone so off the beaten path in regards to how I feel about the Empire, like in a very new extreme direction. And like, little does he know that she is doing all this other stuff in the background. Like, it's not just for charity. It's not just for, the Chandrilan Outreach Foundation. Like, she's trying to build a full on rebellion that's going to eventually take down the Empire. And I just think that's so fascinating how unaware people are of Mon, and it speaks volumes to how well she's put on this persona, that it's almost foolproof in a way, even like when she's living with somebody who could take that down at any moment. Perrin's a total shithead, jealous shithead especially. He doesn't pay attention to Mothma until Tay is getting up in her business, which, like, go for it, Tay. You guys are pretty cute together. I ship it. It's fine.
He has such starry eyes.
Kothma is the ship name. What's the ship name? Kothma. Moncolma. Yeah, Moncolma. Sure.
Moncolma. Yeah.
But the line that she says here is, "I've learned from Palpatine. I show you the stone in my hand. You miss the knife at your throat."
The writing.
I thought that was great.
So good. It's like moments like that again where I'm like, this is like an HBO spy drama. Like that's something that would be in like a best drama actor little preview thing at the Emmys. Like they've really gone full drama, and I'm so happy with it.
Right. If this doesn't get some Emmy nominations, I'm gonna have to have some words with the
I'm gonna be coming back.
The Television Academy. But yeah, full on drama.
I have to say too, like with her mentioning how everybody views her as an irritation and annoyance, like it kind of made me think of the whole like nevertheless she persisted expression with Elizabeth Warren in the Senate. I thought that was like interesting, like the ways in which like people are viewed in politics, and like her as a woman in the Senate, like how people view her and like her viewpoints and like what she's advocating for, and like do they disregard that just because of the fact that she is a woman, and like they kind of underestimate Mon Mothma and like what she's capable of. So I don't know if you guys picked up on that, just in terms of the ideas of being quote unquote annoying and irritating, and like we even see that a little bit with Deidre, which we'll talk about in a second, but the way in which like her and Blevin go back and forth in the ISB meeting, and like how she's like, Blevin's more concerned with my integrity than the actual security of the Empire. Like, I'd love to hear his thoughts, like go off. I don't know. Did you pick up on that at all?
I have to say, I saw some tweets about this, and somebody was like, I'm not on Dedra's side, but I'm not, like, or I can't properly attribute this. And I'm sorry, I just was scrolling this morning and it was like, I want her to have a win, but I don't want her to win.
It's the Hux of it all, right? I don't care if you win.
Yeah.
I just want Kylo Ren to lose, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, I definitely think that is something that is occurring throughout this show. What you said with regards to Nevertheless She Persisted, there is definitely this idea within the context of the show that the women characters, specifically Mon Mothma and Dedra, really have to push against the barriers and doors and glass ceilings in place in order to be respected, be taken seriously, and attempt to get their vision across. And that's something I think we see most clearly with Dedra and that whole conversation with Levin, where she ends up coming out on top. And when Patergaz is like, "Oh, Levin, you're right. Maybe we should all buck the rules a little bit more." I was like,
how the turns of tables.
Yeah, right.
This show's also like very interesting because I think it's pretty blunt in that it's like,
yeah,
it's very, these characters are experiencing sexism and racism and all kinds of stuff like that, and you're like, whoa, Star Wars, you're pulling those cards out. Oh, we haven't talked about that before.
Right. Oh,
like
yeah.
fully, where it's just like sometimes they'll be like, they'll do symbolic stuff with aliens, but they're like, no, this exists within humans still in our fantasy space show, and you're like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
It really catches me off guard every time it's happened, and it's happened constantly, but I really do appreciate it. Like, they're not going for subtleties, they're not holding anybody's hands throughout this. They're like, this is a crime drama.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not saying that this is a galaxy a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. They're like, yes, this is a galaxy a long time ago, far, far away, but that doesn't mean that whole world is elevated. That whole world exists parallel to our own, and I think that's a really exciting piece of this story. Is I don't think we've gotten any story where in this it feels like it exists on a parallel lens to our own world.
Yeah,
like this.
Like you said, very big Star Trek energy, and I really do appreciate it.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
It's kind of got a little bit of the Expanse vibe in it too, with just kind of how crime drama-y that one is kind of in first 2 seasons. And the vibe is good. I love the Expanse. Go watch the Expanse. So
I do want to bring up this one quote from Denise Goff back from August. She said, quote, this is with Total Film. She said, quote, as a woman in that world, for her to advance in any way, she has to be like 10 times better than anyone else in the room. And that felt really relevant to everything we're going through right now. And then it says here, as such, she believes viewers will be on, quote, Dedra's side to a point anyway. And then she says, it's a clever thing to do to show you how hard she has to work. It kind of brings you in to feel cheerleader-y for her. And then you'll be like, she's a psycho. So be careful about supporting her. So I just really feel quote. Like I feel like when I saw that quote originally, I was like, okay, I'm excited to see like what that means. And I really felt like I felt that quote today finally for Dedra. I was like, we've kind of seen it building up with Blevin and the sort of show offmanship with him. And I really feel like we finally felt that cheerleader-y moment today, and then we all have to like reel it back. I was talking to Sarah earlier. We were like, hey, girl boss, but like also like don't girl boss too close to the sun. Like, calm yourself a little bit. Don't discover the rebellion.
How whenever they like give us moments where we want to like root for her, kind of, they do a lot of subtle things to make you like really realize like, oh, she's a bad person. Like specifically, we talked about the costume design. Like for her costume design, I noticed they've been leaning really into like 1940s fascist costumes, like the uniforms and stuff, and to the point where I was like, oh, I know those pants,
right?
Those
how
pants,
the pants are like puffed out, kind of.
Yes,
yeah. And so it's just like it's doing a really good job subtly being like, don't root for this person. Like deep down, you don't want to root for them, but like let's give her some fun moments, but don't root for her. She is bad.
Right. It's interesting because I think fiction kind of plays around a lot with or maybe how we engage with fiction. We play around a lot with like who we root for, who we characters we love, that sort of thing. Like my baby character who has never done anything wrong in their entire life and is like, the worst villain that's ever to have occurred, right? But it becomes more difficult to do that the more grounded to reality, our reality,
Yeah.
a show becomes. And I definitely sense that in this one. And because, as you said, they're kind of putting all these subtleties in there, it really does say to you, like, this person's actions have effects that are concrete. I think with something that's so grand and so big, some of the other Star Wars stories, superhero properties, et cetera, it's kind of like, oh, I can root for the villain because their crimes, capital C, are far away, or they're not at the top of the mind when it is the character. But like, these are the very specific people who are inflicting very specific harms to a lot
Yeah.
of very specific people. And so I think it's just kind of an interesting lens for like Star Wars to take, because I feel like we do a lot of like the very high fantasy sort of enjoyment of villains, and I think that's fine and good. I love a good villain, but like it feels a bit different for a show like this.
We've talked quite a bit about Mon Mothma, Dedra, and I think something that really has continued to shine in the series is the women of Andor, and that sort of to Maarva, who Fiona Shaw, I think, is the MVP of this episode. I think she gave such a brilliant, heart-wrenching performance, having to see her son again come home and him begging her to leave with him to go find a better life, and for her to be like, no, I can't do that. And that's so hard to watch. It's so hard to watch Cassian Andor continue living in this fantasy world of sorts. He really is a family man at heart. He wants to support Maarva and B2, and he wants to be there for Bix. But I also think at the same time, he's not very practical. He's not very logical about the situation that's happening. And so it's interesting when we think about like, okay, well, he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old. Like, has he really been at this point in his life? Does he feel like he's been in that fight since he was 6, or has he not realized yet that he's been in that fight? Because right now it feels like he hasn't realized that yet. He realizes that he's trying to live this like lofty, on the run life where he can, as Bix puts it, lie, steal, run away, etc. And that's not sustainable. And it's interesting to see him do this mission for Aldhani and return back to Ferrix to kind of go back to his old ways. And for him to realize like, oh, things won't be the same. Like the Empire has shown up and Maarva cannot just leave and uproot her whole life for me. Like she's got to stay here. And she now has a newfound purpose as well. But what did you guys think of Fiona Shaw and some of what she had to say to Cassian, like in the most like emotional of ways? Like it's a really tough scene to watch.
Oh yeah, she absolutely like killed it, but it was so like, oh man, this is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely gut wrenching, and like, also, did you notice the parallel between this and Rogue One, where I'll find the exact line, but she says a line that's almost the exact same wording as when Jin's father leaves her.
Oh,
With when he like drops her off in that like weird underground pod thing that Saw then discovers her. There's like a almost exact wording parallel line, and so I was like, oh no, they're never gonna see each other.
Oh, is it when Galen says, "Tell me you understand," and she goes, "I
Yeah,
understand,"
yes.
and then this is like Marva's like, "Tell me you understand," and he's like,
Yes.
"I don't." Oh
Yeah.
man, the Jin Cassian vibes are through the roof.
I know.
Thank
Oh,
you.
boy.
I think I am going to go die now.
Skylar's here to rip out our hearts with the
parallel with
revelations.
consequences too, because like the next time she sees her dad after that, he dies, and it's like, I don't want that for her. I don't want that for her.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Okay. I'm upset.
When I found out that parallel, I was like, I'm gonna cry.
This whole scene is so sad, and also so curious, because we talked about this a little bit last week, but this is something that Tony Gilroy talked about, or somebody was talking about, how this is a show kind of about everybody finding their own personal rebellion. You know, for Skeen, it was something very specific. For Mon Mothma, it seems to be something very specific. For Cassian, it's something specific. Everybody has their own motivation of why they are making the choices to go against the Empire or to buck the system, whatever it may be. And Maarva's path forward is a really interesting take on that, where she says, you know, the Empire can't get to me because I've created something better, like in her mind, essentially, or like they can't get to the one thing they can't take from her is herself, right? In theory. And like that was particularly heartbreaking because it was like an acknowledgement of like her age and her pace and what she has to do. But on the other hand, it's like it is a show of strength that she's not just submitting, you know, like there's a line there that's really fascinating to me. Yeah, I don't know. And then we get this whole parallel with the flashback to Clem's death, and that's,
oh my gosh,
that's something else. That's something else.
Did we know his dad's name was Clem before this episode?
In the credits, yes.
Okay, because I don't know why it just hit me like, oh, that's his name on Aldhani is Clem. It's his dad's name. Like it just hit me today.
There might have been somewhere where she, like, I think when they pick up Cassian, she might have been like, oh, Clem. And that's all we kind of got of that. I think.
Speaking of like really depressing Rogue One parallels, can I offer up another one?
Yeah. I mean, we're here.
I was thinking today, now that we've finally seen the flashback, which I think the way they did the flashback with Clem was brilliant, because we see Cassian, like old Cassian, like Diego Luna Cassian from the front. And then when we get the shot of Cassian from behind, it's clearly a different person. It's totally. Like a younger actor, you know? So I think that's like really fascinating how that's done. It's really heartbreaking to see that really Clem just kind of got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and seeing all those clone troopers turn. And interesting to see the people say, you know, for the Republic, free Ferrix, you know. But I think of Jyn and Cassian talking, and again, the line I keep coming back to is, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. And I think Cassian's going to come to a place where he realizes he's always been in that fight. I think kind of reliving the trauma of Clem as part of that. But the specific line he says to Jyn in Rogue One is, some of us just decided to look up. And I think of looking up and seeing Clem hanging in the square. It's the JoJo. It's the Jojo Rabbit of it all, right? Which, you know, it's
like, again, it's something that Star Wars usually tiptoes around, as like, oh, like the, you know, empty threats sort of kind of, where it's like, oh, you'll hang for this or whatever. And they have been saying that throughout the series, and it's like, oh, people do. And so it just like brings some like real heaviness to it, you know?
Yeah. So I just thought of that in terms of him looking up and seeing his own father hanging in that square. And I just thought back to the line where he tells Jyn, I decided to look up. And I'm wondering when he's going to get to that point where he realizes like what happened to my dad is like unacceptable. And I'm going to do everything in my power to put a stick in the eye at the Empire, as Luthen says, right? Because he's not quite there. He still wants to run. He still wants to go to some tropical island for a vacation, as we see, but like he's not quite there yet. But like, when is he going to have that change of heart and realize like what happened can't happen again?
Well, I think that in many ways, like, he does recognize the weight of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And as it happens, we see him kind of running with like a stick, like towards the stormtroopers, like in a fit of rage, it seems. I think he understands like the gravity of it and the emotionality of it, and how unacceptable it is, but it doesn't manifest for him in rebellion. Like, in rebellion, in
has he repressed it in a way? You know, like is it a repressed memory at this point?
I don't think it's necessarily repressed. I think he manifested his grief and his rage and his like deep frustration into how we found him as the show began, where he was like doing an odd job here or there, skimming off the top, getting money, getting
looking for a
that
sister.
artifact. Right. Like I think he's got motivations that like push him to do something, but it's just not, it's a selfish motivation as opposed to a selfless one.
Exactly. I think whatever is going to happen in the next 2 episodes, something is going to happen, possibly in jail. Poor guy.
Jail.
Where something's just going to click, and because the whole reason he wanted to leave, granted it was a good selfish, you're allowed, you can be selfish in a good way, but it's a good selfish reason to want to like be like, Mom, let's get out of here. He's still acting on selfishness up until this point, and we have 5 episodes left, and it's like, well, how's he going to turn from I'm willing to die for this rebellion, I'm willing to do whatever they tell me to do, no matter how morally gray. It's like something's going to happen with this man, and I'm so scared for him, but also excited because like something's going to happen.
And I do think everybody that he's meeting is playing a part in that. And Sarah and I talked about this. It's a show of like butterfly effects, how, and I tweeted about this today, is like, the show is explaining how the Empire is, and Sarah said this, is not only not functioning as well as it could. You said that, Sarah. And then I kind of added to that and said, like, the Empire is also just like very arrogant and has its own hubris. That's like, we do not care about the lowly people, like the everyday citizens. And this is a show about everyday citizens rising up. And Maarva says that, like, people are rising up. Like the people on Aldhani did this thing. Like if they had the strength to do that, like why shouldn't I have the strength to like stay here and stick it out and do what I can? And to take a show about Cassian Andor, and like, how does somebody who like lost everything and kind of came from a lowliest of places like turn into this rebellious hero? And it's him seeing that change in Maarva. It's him meeting somebody like Vel, who says everybody has their own form of rebellion, and now he's seeing Maarva have her own form of rebellion. And I do think it's interesting how the show has tiptoed around the word rebellion. We've heard it used very sparingly. Sometimes we see like partisans, and that's like in reference to Saw's group, but rebellion is used like very intentionally in certain parts. And I think it was really used impactfully here when he asks like, what's keeping you here? And she says, the rebellion. He's like, what? And I just thought it was really interesting that word is used as a punctuation mark anytime it's brought up. But everybody he's meeting is going to lead to what I think the change that you're expecting, Skylar, and that we're all expecting, is like, what is going to be the moment?
Do we think he's going to suggest that they call it the rebellion because of what Maarva said? Do we think that's what's going to...
No. I had a realization as you're saying that has nothing to do with that. I'm so sorry, but they can't. No, that would literally kill me. I would literally quit being a Star Wars fan. I cannot. But I realized, I'm thinking about these trailers and how much we have seen. We've seen this prison breakout, guys.
Yeah. It's the THX-esque
It's the
scene.
Yeah. The very
which I cannot wait.
Running through the hallway, and then him smashing something into like a panel on the wall, and then falling to the ground. And there's like an explosion that happens. I thought this was going
George
to happen.
Lucas is watching the show, by the way. He's like, oh yeah, I made that in the 1972. Yeah, made that. THX 1138.
Oh God.
But I'm so surprised that the trailer has stuff from everything on the crust this season.
It really does. It's not holding any cards close to the vest. The show, and I think that's done the show a service. Is like, we're not going to hold anything back. Tony Gilroy's like, this is the last shot of the series. Basically, is Rogue One. Like, he doesn't care.
That's my favorite thing about him. He's just like, I don't care. But like, I watched those trailers, and we talked about those trailers for such a long time. And, we thought about, how it could all piece together, and if it's a flashback or not a flashback, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, wait a second, we got trailer content in this episode, and we still haven't seen this breakout. So things are gonna capital H happen here.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not just Cassian breaking out of jail. It's Cassian starting an uprising in the prison. So
Like, something's gotta happen for him to, like, get to
right,
there, you know?
right. And I
But
feel
also,
like
he has a hit put out on him still, so it's like, how does he go from which he doesn't know about, there's a hit on him, to starting, I don't know, maybe the prison rebellion could be them being like, "Oh, maybe we'll take out the hit, this guy, let's bring him back." But I don't know, it's like
yeah, I mean, ooh,
there's an interesting dynamic with that where I'm like, "What's how are we gonna get here?" And so this is such a good show to be a viewer. I love
it's
watching
so
TV
I'm having
shows.
a great time.
I love I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but I love a weekly release. I just love a weekly release and then just thinking
Mhm.
and being like, what's gonna happen next week? Like, it's
I am
Wednesday and I'm already like, what's gonna happen next Wednesday?
There's no better feeling than to savor an episode and sit with it for a week and let it simmer and then get the next installment.
yeah.
I will never support the binge model. It's just not for me.
I see both sides of this. And on the one hand, I'm like, weekly good, you know, I don't have to record, you know, about 18 episodes in, you know, one sitting on a podcasting side. And on a personal side, it's like, okay, well, if I don't have to watch it in the you know, the 8 hours from when it drops to episode, you know, 10 or whatever, before spoilers are posted. But on the other hand, I'm enjoying this show so much that every time it finishes, I'm like, I have to wait a week? A week? I really have felt that the past couple of weeks. And I'm like, what in the world and why? Like, very dramatic about it too. Because I mean, I guess it gives us the time to sit about it and think about it. But like, come on, I'm ready. I'm ready right now. I'm ready to give you my money. I'm ready to give you my eyeballs. And it's like, and give you my thoughts, my brain space. So frustrating.
I think of Cassian here in this instance. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. I was watching Lost where you had to wait a week.
Oh my
Actually, you
gosh!
had to wait, like,
Don't.
you had to wait a year and a half between seasons 2 and 3 because of the writer's strike. You were like, what's going to happen on Lost?
I swear to God, you cannot be like, oh, back in my day in the Lost, there was a point in freaking time fairly recently where I was watching 14 shows. This was a bit dramatic of me. I understand that. In a single like season of television, and they were like all cable shows. I am aware how the weekly release works. I have done it before. I am just impatient in my old age.
Listen, have you ever had to watch the TV Guide channel, Sarah?
No, but I've scrolled through.
Okay, you have no ground to stand on. You had to sit there and you had to wait and you had to wonder. You had to wonder, when is that weekly show coming on? I have to wait for the whole thing to scroll up. Oh crap, I missed it. I gotta wait again. Anyways.
Brad is going to the old folks home next year. It's a whole thing.
I'm going to the old folks home. I feel it in my back. Before we move on to the Niamos beach party, I do want to say one last thing here on Maarva. The line that I really connected with on the second watching, and it kind of tore me down a little bit. It's when Maarva tells him, you know, go somewhere and find peace, and he's like, "I'll never have peace. I'm always going to be worrying about you." And she says, "That's love."
Yeah.
You know,
Such
that's
a
just
good
love.
line.
Nothing you can do about it. I've never loved anything the way I love you, and I've never fretted on anything more. But this time, you can't stay and I can't go. And I just feel like the "that's just love" line, like, it's just so simple, but it hits you with such a punch to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a show full of like banger quotes and banger writing. Like, I'm just so impressed.
I mean, and that's also
that
a
was
word
a really
that
deep
Star
one.
Wars doesn't throw around often. You know, like, I mean,
No.
there's the iconic "I love you," I know, but like, can you think of another? Like, I mean, they probably said that in the prequels, but I can't think of a.
I truly, deeply love you. Before I die, I wanted you to know.
Anakin, you
Yeah.
were my brother. I loved you.
Yeah.
It's like they throw it in serious moments, and it's like there's, you know, and that's their serious moment for this one.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah. Love is not easy in the Star Wars universe. It is
No,
never
it's not.
nice and fun and romantic. It is
Be awful.
love is pain and everybody dies and also we're allergic to romance. Sneeze noise.
I'm gonna use this one moment though to connect this to the Matt Stover Rotz novel. Love can ignite the stars. Love can ignite the stars. You know. So. But I truly think though, like that's so important because if we wonder what's the catalyst for Cassian's change, like I think this could be part of it. Is like Maarva's love for him ignites a fire within him to be like, well, if Maarva's doing this, I also want to do it. Like I also want to fight for something larger than myself. And then of course B2's like, can I speak now? And she's like, no. Poor B2.
Best character. I love so much.
He's so great.
My sweet baby. I have like a B2 emo shrine in my office now. It's like a B2 emo like Black Series, the Droid Factory figure from Disney, and then I have a Funko Pop of B2. So slowly growing. I love him so much. Anyways. All right, Sarah, you want to throw us over to the beach party of the summer, of the fall?
It's a scariff beach party. We're gonna blow up the beach. Anyway, not that kind of beach party, but we are at Galaxy Far, Far Away, Florida. It is, you know, it's cool. It's the music is vibey, you know. The people are getting laid in this town, and they are also just sitting out on the beach. Or on the, you know, they're sitting out like on this boardwalk sort of area. It's not beach. They're not in the sand. They're kind of on some concrete as you are in Star Wars. But anyway, not important. We should start with shirtless Cassian Andor. Let's start there. Let's get out of the way. I was not
only
warned.
Shirtless, pants down pretty low.
In the shower too.
We had the low rise pants on in this scene.
It's giving Havana Nights.
I was not prepared. I was not told. I was alarmed.
Why would I tell you about that? Like, why would I ruin the most?
I don't think you understand. Like,
thirsty
I need to
moment
prepare.
of the episode.
I need to like build up some walls so I'm not affected. You know, like. I need to not
like the price seeing this at 1 a.m. and then being like, why is my timeline empty? Why aren't we discussing this?
You're like, because nobody has seen it yet. It is later everywhere else. I need to be given time to prepare to build up some walls so I'm not affected by them. And I feel like I was not given that opportunity today because, again, as you said, nobody was talking about it on the timeline at 1 a.m. because everybody was fast asleep in their beds when the time zones are later across the country, at least. Oh my God. That's my comment. That's the end of my comment.
He looked great. So I was trying to think of like how many shirtless men have been in Star Wars. So we have Kylo Ren. We have
obviously
Obi-Wan Kenobi in the bacta tank. We have Anakin Skywalker getting up from his nightmare. We have Luke Skywalker in the bacta tank. Unfortunately, we did not have Cobb Vanth. Why wasn't Timothy Oliphant shirtless in the bacta tank? I don't know. And then I think we also had shirtless Tamara Morrison in the Book of Boba Fett. I'll take it. And now we have shirtless Diego Luna. We love it. We love it when Star Wars is shirtless. I think we should have more shirtless in Star Wars. When are we getting an ass is my question. We got Master Cheeks in the Halo series. So
that's true. That was very alarming.
So like why can't Star Wars give us its Master Cheeks is my question.
I don't think we need it. That's my hot take.
Anyways.
Do we need it? Maybe not. Could it happen in Andor specifically? Maybe this is like the first TV show where they're like sex guys. They're having
sex, pissing on a rock, the shit word, the ass word. What are we gonna get next? Like somebody actually taking a poop? Like I feel like we're getting there almost.
I mean, prison. We're going to prison.
No. Oh my God. Okay. I can't.
Usually
do it.
About the hour 20 mark we get off the rails, so this is pretty on brand for us.
Okay. We don't need it. That's my take of the day. But Andor, anything could happen.
Shirtless, yeah. I love how the woman in his room is like, hey, can you pick up Pizzos, like the greeny green ones, also the Revnog, please? I'm like, what is happening? I'm like,
His
what is
dialogue,
this?
it's incredible. It's so specific and it means nothing.
I know. Like, is there like a Glup-Shido for objects in the Star Wars galaxy? Because whatever Pizzos are, I want to know everything about
there
them.
is a
like,
Glup-Shido for objects in the galaxy. I certainly have one. It's the Kazrath device. It's my
of
entire
course.
like. I know my Star Wars identity is not the Kazrath device. It's like my handle on Twitter and it's all my name. You're right, ever. But like, if it weren't my name, it would be at Kazrath, like very easily. Like that is my thing. It is an object in 2 issues of the Poe Dameron comic where a light sider and a dark sider have to work together. It's in the vaults in Cato Nemoidia. It was found by Lursen Tekka. Anyway, that's it. There's the whole thing.
Yeah, so we're here. We're on Niamos. Cassian Andor's on spring break. He's getting some for sure. We respect it. Skylar, how did you feel when he's walking down the boardwalk? He gets stopped by a trooper for just existing because the Empire sucks and they profile everybody apparently, which is terrible. But when we see some guys running and a KX security droid starts coming up the stairs, what's going through your mind? Because I'm still giggling every time I watch it.
It was honestly like, this was such like a heavy, so many moments where I was like shocked, but like that moment shocked me the most because I was like, oh my god, it's the boy. And then to immediately not like, I mean, I know in Rogue One we heard like the normal voice and not the modified voice, but to hear the normal voice was like very jarring to me. I was like, oh no, you're not my friend.
It's so I've been thinking a lot about descriptions of voices lately, and I can't describe this one. It's so gritty is not the right word because it's lower than gritty, but it's so like grumbly and uncomfortable. It's really well done, the voice, and it's such a moment. It's such a moment. I don't know. I'm like afraid and delighted and sad and thrilled all at the same time at the end of this episode.
Yeah, I saw it coming up the stairs. I was like, wait, are we getting K2 like this early in the series? And it remains to be seen like if there will be a K2 soon, because I think like establishing K2 units in the series is like, okay, yes, it's like reminding the audience like, oh, this is a Rogue One prequel. And the way that the moment is played is like, oh, hey, look, it's the droid that you all know Cassian is like best friends with. So like we're all kind of on the edge of our seat waiting, like, what is it going to sound like? Is it going to sound like Alan Tudyk? Like, is this going to be Alan Tudyk's voice? Like, what's happening?
And it wasn't even like they had him do a different voice. It just wasn't him, which also was just even more jarring, where I was like, oh.
Do you think there's a possibility that like, now that we've established there are KX units on this planet, like, will there be some in the prison, and will Cassian possibly slice one in the breakout to help him? And maybe
that's my
that
current running theory. That's the only
a good theory.
Really real theory I feel like confident about. I'd say anything else is a loose kind of like, oh, I would like to see this, or this is kind of what I'm feeling, the vibes. But like for that, I feel like that might be how they get together, is that, like maybe they like the cell guards there, and so he reprograms it, and then they're about to leave and he's just like, what do I do now? And he's just like, come on, just come with us. I think it's going to be one of those moments, which would be really cute if it happens.
I think it could be, something where it happens here, or if it's something where like he learns the tools for like something to happen in the second season.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, I think either way it's going to be relevant to K2, because it feels so random to bring this droid into the picture and like to not address it in some way. I think those are both great theories. I haven't thought about like the tools to do it later on. That's actually a really great thought. I like that. Because we know like too, there's the comic for K2 and Cassian, like how they met.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of just getting completely retconned, honestly. I think that's like getting thrown out the window a little bit. I think they're just like, we're not going to follow that. We're going to do our own thing.
Whatever.
Which
Cool.
I think is which I think is probably for the best, because like who has really read the comic? No offense, but like I don't think it's largely been read, so it's better to just like tell a fresh story and kind of just go with it.
All canon is valid, but some canon is less canon than other canon.
Yeah. I do love, by the way, though, like as we're in this like very serious moment of Cassian again, like getting profiled, and he is just like walking to the grocery store to get food, and he's like getting arrested for literally no reason, which again continues the show's very like anti-policing message and like very overt messaging at that. But somehow it gets turned into like slapstick humor, which I loved, you know, like the whole idea of like, hang here for just a second, and the droid's like, hang, and then he like picks him up and he's like, oh, I think he meant to watch, tell him you meant watch me. Diego Luna through the whole interaction is so hilarious. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just going to the store. Like, who are you talking about? Like, I'm just walking.
When he's in front of the judge and he's like, I'm a tourist. Like,
I'm a tourist.
They're like, yeah, shame. It would have been 6 months, but 6 years.
And somehow we end up back to Cyril, because it really ties into like this idea that Cyril has of like the capital R rules, and the rules being just because they are the rules, and like the idea that he's doing the right thing. And I think that this is the whole system operates on that same principle, that the Empire is just because the rules are just, and the rules are just because the Empire is just. And it's not a conversation of it's a top-down conversation of morality, as opposed to everybody kind of having their own sense of morality and right and wrong and justice within a system. And I think it's an interesting and valuable conversation to have in this show, because policing, justice system, government, laws, big ideas are all really important topics in our society, whether they function well or not. And I think that we could very easily, and without a lot of resistance, argue that they're not. So yeah, an interesting.
Not a lot of justice with Cassian here.
No.
I think the lesson that we've learned is Cassian should not go to beaches, because either he goes to jail or he dies.
Oh, get out. The episode is over. We got to do our Andors and get out of here. I cannot handle this anymore.
Or we mentioned earlier when we were talking about the concrete. The reason there's so much concrete is I specifically know, I'm pretty sure, didn't they film this on Venice Beach or like somewhere in Los Angeles?
Oh, probably. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that is one of the classic California, huge, giant concrete area and then beach.
Right,
so, like,
right.
Seeing that get incorporated into this, it was just so amusing to me, where I'm like, I feel like there's a roller skater like 100 feet to the right, like in reality when they filmed this. And it was just very amusing to me.
And maybe like a couple of like camper vans and or people living out of their vans, just like in a couple of parking spots, you know, like
somebody surfing, getting their surfboard set up, like just out of shot.
Right.
Like
literally. Okay.
It was actually filmed at Cleveley's Beach. It was actually in Lancashire, UK.
Ooh.
UK. Wow.
UK beaches.
Yeah. A wrench has been thrown into our entire conversation here. I don't know how to feel about that
now. Yeah, the Cleveley News account tweeted and said, finally, we can unveil that we are Niamos. You can see Cleveley in all its glory. I was like,
wow,
I love you guys.
Pretty glorious.
So good for you. Good for you.
Maybe there's still a couple of vans out there, and the surfer, and the and the roller skater.
There's a surfing, but I don't know about roller skating. There's cobblestones over there.
Well, this is pretty concrete-ish here, at least at this one spot. But okay. If we're about to wrap up, does anyone have anything more to say on this before I pivot?
No, go for it.
Okay. I have a couple odds and ends. I don't know if anybody else does, but I just need to get them out into the open, and then I can not talk about them again. And we didn't really talk about Bix this episode, but like interesting. There's something still happening on Ferrix there. Like I don't think this is the end of that story. We did not talk about Admiral Yularen, I don't think.
Oh my gosh.
Admiral Yularen. That's one. The second one that I found really important and very specific. Yes. Very important, very specific, and not at all important is Luthen Rail's comm that he listens to in his showroom really gives me the vibe of an emergency weather alert that you get on your TV. And it unsettled me. It unsettled me to I was terrified of those as a child. So I also think Tay calling Coruscant no escape, like he's like, I come here and I feel like there's no escape. Like, I don't know how you do it. It's really interesting. The systems either change or die. It's a really interesting Deirdre quote.
That's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
I guess my only odds and ends would be just the title of the episode, announcement. I think that's interesting how Deidre says, the rebels were playing right into their hand. They want us to think it's a robbery, but really it's an announcement. Like they are going to do more. This is just the beginning of it. And she's right. And it remains to be seen if the Empire will take her seriously. And she makes a case for herself in this episode, which, yay, girl boss, but also, please don't. You're a bad person, so don't do that. It's the duality of Deidre. But Denise Goff is again playing the character just so brilliantly. That's my only other thought before we get into our Andors.
All right.
So our Andors, this is our new segment where we talk about the thing that we liked. So we liked X and Y, and then we pit two things against each other. Do you like X or Y? So we're going to figure that out now. Skylar, let's start with your ands. So what are the two highlight moments of the episode for you?
Espionage capes in the scenes where they were like in disguise trying to meet up with each other.
Yes.
Those like hooded cape things.
I agree.
And Mon Mothma's earring, like the like long earring. Those are my
people are talking about the earring. That's the talk of the town, of the Twitter town.
So good.
Mon Mothma giving us some of the best looks since Padme. I love that.
I live for it. It's really very normal.
Okay. Sarah, you go ahead with your ands.
My ands are Mon Mothma in all her beauty, in all her glory, in all her multifacetedness, and Tay Kolmar. A bit of a mystery still, but there's something there. He's got some sparkly, twinkly eyes, and I am curious to know more about his character.
I would love to know a lot more about his character. Tay, if you're out there, let me know.
Call Brad.
Text me. Text me, Tay. Okay, so my ands. First off, we didn't talk about Cinta. I love the classic Star Wars shot of the Star Destroyer going overhead, like from A New Hope, kind of reminiscent of that. But also her cool ass scooter that she's like going down the hill on, a little like scooter speeder thing. Very freaking cool. And then also, and I think one of the best lines ever written in Star Wars, which is uttered by Cassian in his conversation with Bix. And it's, quote, "Your crazy boyfriend tries to get me killed and I'm the villain." I thought that was very great. I thought that was like, honestly, like 10 out of 10 writing. Diego Luna is the only person who could have uttered that line, except for maybe Harrison Ford in the 1980s. So yeah.
I feel like I could hear Adam Driver saying that.
It would be taken with a totally different tone, though.
Yeah.
It'd be a little bit. I feel like it'd be a little bit more like punchy and aggressive.
Yeah.
And like anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got an or. I'm ready with an or.
Okay, go ahead.
Where would you like to have your beach party?
Oh my god.
Scarif or Niamos?
Sure.
We don't have a pronunciation yet, but you know what I'm saying. Very serious question, much importance to the plot, to the story, to your personal selves. This is going to say a lot about you. So think hard, you guys.
I feel like my answer could change as we've sat with that planet for like 5-10 minutes, so I feel like I haven't
literally like
fully
4 minutes. Yeah.
we haven't seen its full potential, but too much concrete for me, so I'm gonna go Scarif. Too much concrete.
More sand. Yeah.
I need more sand and I need more water.
Yeah, yeah.
And they got the palm
That's a
trees.
good answer.
Don't forget that.
I agree.
That is true. Yeah.
For what it's worth.
I mean, both planets have shore troopers, which kind of sucks because, you know, F the shore troopers. But I don't know. Like Nicholas Patel's score is really leaning me towards Niamos because, I mean, I need that score on like soundtrack right now on Spotify. I need to like listen to it on repeat, like wake up in the morning as my ringtone. I think I have to choose Scarif, despite the fact that it gets destroyed, just because of the Lego Star Wars Vacation summer vacation thing. Whatever it's called. Yep, that's the driving factor for me. What about you, Sarah?
Valid. Scarif. I agree, Skylar, with your assessment. There's too much concrete. And I feel like I could have a more peaceful vacation on Scarif, minus the shore troopers and the Dust Star.
Listen, we can just go like 20 years before all of that.
Right. Before they even build anything there. I mean, it's just deserted island kind of a vibe, but palm trees, it's nice.
Skylar, do you have an or? And if not, I have one. And these are ones that are a little tougher.
I think you should go.
Okay. I have an or for the group. Mom Mothma says, in talking with Tay Kolma, she says, there are 3 people in the galaxy who know what I'm about to tell you. Okay. So obviously one is Luthen. That's 1.
Yeah.
Kayla, his assistant. 2. Who's the 3rd? Is it anyone else? Or is it Bail Organa? Is Bail Organa number 3?
Oh.
Who is the 3rd? Who is the 3rd?
But he's not showing up in the show. Thank you.
Or is Mothma including herself as the 3rd person here? The 3 people that know. Is it her? Is it her, Luthen, and Kayla? Or is it Bail Organa? Is it Mothma or Bail?
Wait, what if we just like don't include Clea in it? What if we just like
what if she's like, oh, Clea? It has to be her.
Yeah, but like what if she's not thinking about that? What if she's like, oh well, she's just the assistant?
There could be the elusive 2nd and 3rd person now. Oh man, this really, really changes the game.
Yeah, I'm throwing a wrench into this or.
Yeah.
Honestly, that could be it. Like she could just be thinking of. I agree. It could be 2, and then who's this mysterious 3rd person? Is this a new character we could be getting potentially?
That's a good point. Or is it Saw Gerrera? Who knows?
Ooh,
who knows?
I think
it's Bail Organa.
I can't think about this anymore.
I've been really latched onto this quote for far too long today because I'm like, is it Bail? Is it Bail? Bail watch continues, unfortunately.
But I don't think Bail is showing up in this series.
I don't think he is either.
I'm like world's number 5 Bail stan after a couple of notable Bail stands I know.
At the very least is showing up in season 2 because if it leads into Rogue One, he has to be in season 2.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but he's not.
I don't think he's in this season. It's too early. Too early.
I could see not this season, but season 2, 100%. Yeah.
Anyway,
Paige and me Schmitz. Anyways, Skylar, any ors for us before we close out here?
Does it have to relate to this episode?
We have no rules. Just an or.
Smashed by 1,000 payments, or shot in a field by Cassian.
Shot in a field by Cassian, 100%. Diego Luna, shoot me, baby.
Oh my gosh.
Why not? Shoot me right in the back.
I think I'm gonna have to go with that option as well.
Now, is Daedra with her Imperial black boot stepping on you another option, or is that off the table here? Is it just Cassian shooting you? Because I would take that option.
Hasn't happened yet, so we can't put that on the table yet.
That's episode 9, correct?
We'll have to circle back. We'll have to circle back to this.
Yes.
We don't know what her and Cyril are going to be like.
Who knows?
Who knows? It's just gonna get a little crazy.
Oh boy, lots of fun ors here, lots of fun ands, and that makes for a fun and or.
Get it together.
That brings us to the end of
Okay.
the episode here on Andor Candor. What a fun time. This is our longest one of the season so far, because we had such a great discussion. Skylar, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a pleasure
Thank you for
because
having me.
been long overdue to have you back on the podcast. Where can our folks find you online? What do you got coming up that you want them to know about?
Yeah, you can find me on both Instagram and Twitter under Misnamed Plants. And I have some stuff that I released with Superyaki recently. We did a Mike Myers collection. And I know there's some stuff left over from that. So if you're a fan of Austin Powers or Shrek, definitely check those out. And we have, I think, just like a couple, it could be gone, but I think there might be a couple Mummy water bottles left and maybe Mummy shirts as well. So if you are a fan of any of those, definitely check out superyaki.com and check out our collaborations.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, Shrek has layers. So does Andor. It's all connected. It's all
Wow,
connected.
it was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on. Again, it was so much fun. I know how much the series has meant to you, and also just the character of Cassian Andor. So this is so perfect. But for all of you out there listening, be sure to follow Skylar. You can follow the podcast on all of our socials, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. You can find Sarah and I's thoughts on our Goodreads, our Letterboxd, our Twitters. If you dare to follow us on those platforms, be warned. And also, if wherever you're listening to the podcasts, leave us a review if you enjoyed the episode, and subscribe to the podcast so all of our future Andor Candor episodes drop right in your feed.
We also have a Patreon where tiers start at just $1. And these things include schedule a newsletter. And then from there, we have extra bonus episodes and such things. So if that interests you, check it out. And we are extremely grateful to all of our patrons who help make the show happen. Amy, Brian with an I, Brian with a Y, Cheryl, Clay, Danny, Davis, Dylan, Huang, Jen, Knights of Ren, Leanne, Levi, Lucy, Lindsay, Randy, Rob, Saber Bouquet, Sky Talker, Stephen, Travis, and Tom, and our newest patron, Santa. Thank you all very much for your support. And thank you to everybody who took the time out of your day to listen to this episode. We are incredibly grateful. And thanks for spending your day with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you, Skylar. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.
Bye.